Good evening. Wow, welcome everybody to the first ever CSAx. Wow, we're so excited that you made it. So tonight, the Rise and Speak students, many of them who've never spoken on stage before, are going to come up and share their deeply personal messages of transformation, love, and hope. And so as they get up here tonight, we're asking you to hold them in your highest and highest of minds. We might hear some ums, we might hear some ahs, but we're also going to hear some treasures. We're going to hear some revelation. We're going to hear some of the light that has come out of some of the darkness that some of our speakers have been through. I think it's no coincidence that we have this talk tonight on the shortest day of the year and the darkest day of the year. But I also know that these messages are going to take you from the darkness of shame, hurt, blame, regret, to the light of love, of hope, of connection, of lessons learned. So we're so happy that you made it tonight. We could not have a CSAx without you, and we're so grateful that you made it tonight. Tonight could not have happened without some help, so I want to thank a few people. First and foremost, I would like to thank Reverend Dr. Georgia. Yes! For saying yes to all my crazy ideas. Well, most of them. Also, you love our backdrop? Janice Olivia donated the material. Elizabeth Robbins sewed the top. Nancy Stoner just ordered the banner, had it sent to me. Kim McConnell and Brandy Lee Baker fixed my terrible engineering job today so it would stay up. Just so many wonderful things. I want to thank Mark Kellogg for doing the sound. Tracy had no idea she was videotaping till yesterday. I want to thank her so much for showing up and helping out with tonight. And then, of course, last but not least, you don't see her because she's in the back right now, propping up our first speaker, Leah Eldridge, who's been my amazing TA. Absolutely love her. We could not have done tonight without her. So tonight's a free event. We will take a love offering, 100% of which will go to the church, and we'll talk about that at the end of the night if you would like to give your gift to this event. So without further ado, are we ready to kick it off? I want to introduce our first speaker tonight, Judy Pace. Judy has been a nurse for over 40 years. I think that deserves like a gold medal, right? She's been at CSA for over 6 years, and she is a budding storyteller. Her talk tonight is entitled 18 Moves to My Purpose. Give a big welcome to Judy.
Grew up thinking I had a normal childhood. People told me, no, you didn't. I didn't understand why. Did you have a normal childhood? Does anybody know what the definition is of a normal childhood? Well, the reason I was told I didn't have a normal childhood was because by the time I graduated from high school, I'd been in 18 schools. So moving was a very common thing for my family. My dad was in the service in the Air Force, and he taught electrical systems on airplanes. So every 8 months or a year, we would move from place to place so that he could teach everyone that needed to know his information. My mom was pretty much a stay-at-home mom, which is a good thing. I don't think moving that often is very compatible with a full-time job. But I have a brother, Dennis. He's just a year younger than I am. And we were very close. When there was nobody to play with, we were there. When we were the new kids on the block, we had each other. I did have a younger brother, 6 years younger. His name is Don. And I sort of used him for entertainment, I think. But moving really wasn't a problem to us. Although, if you asked my parents, you might hear a little different story. Like, Ma, Dennis is smiling at me again. Dennis stopped smiling. Anyway, when I was near the end of my 6th grade, we moved to Rapid City, South Dakota, and we moved on the base. The reason the base was so exciting was that everybody there knew how it felt to be the new one on the block, and they also knew how it felt to say goodbye. We had a lot of friendship. One thing that we had that was so exciting, and we'd never had it before, my family had never had this opportunity, and it's not a television, it's a phone, a telephone. We had our own telephone, and we lived on the base, and we had the base directory, so my girlfriends and I, we can kind of look at it and say, well, let's call Jimmy. Hi, Jimmy. We love you. Let's do it again. Okay. Thank goodness there was no caller ID. I did have a boyfriend, and I made sure that he knew that I liked him. I threw a rock at him, and so he obviously was aware of my love for him. One of the most exciting things at that point in time was our 7th grade class was offered an opportunity to make a design or image that would be used on the floor of the lobby of the new administration building. So it was just the 7th graders, and everybody wanted to jump in and do it, and I found a magazine. I think it was an advertisement for the Marlboro Man. Yeah. Anyway, it had a picture of a covered wagon at night with a campfire all around and the stars sparkling in the sky. And I took that and I cut it apart, different size pieces, and I glued them together on a background of black. So everything showed up really nicely. So everybody turned theirs in. We were all excited. When would we know? Oh, okay. Okay, now they're going to announce it. Oh. And the winner is Judy Kramer. No! Wow, wow, wow. I never really won anything, much less something this fantastic. I mean, it was going to be on that floor forever and ever. I was going to be famous. Did you see the floor that Judy designed? Did you? I knew Judy back when she was in 6th grade. Yeah. I don't think I've ever had a time that was happier. But as time passed, my mother said, you know, your father's been transferred to Georgia, and we have to leave right away. Okay. I mean, we've been there for 11 months, so it was time to move, but did we have to go like right away? Yes, we have to go right away. I said, but wait, you know, I'm going to get an award for the contest. I'm sorry, we can't stay. But my birthday, it's a 13th birthday. It's my big birthday. No, we can't stay. So I was so angry at not having any control over my life. I'm not really sure how my parents handled all that. They gave me a lot of love. But when we got to Georgia, we didn't live on the base, we lived in town, which was really an exaggeration because we lived on a street with about 3 houses, another couple of houses down the block. And I learned then and there what the difference between a street and a road was. You know, we had the dirt road, and I think we only saw the mailman come down that road. So we were out there in the middle of nowhere. There was nothing to see. Nobody to talk to. No phone. Yeah, we still had a TV, but we didn't get reception. In those days, you know, we just had the rabbit ears on the TV, you moved them around. Well, we could move our rabbits here just about any place and we still didn't get reception. So Mom said, well, just wait, you're going to start school. And I know we were riding the bus, and we'd ridden the bus a lot. It was a good time, really, to meet people on the bus, see where they live. Maybe they did live near me. So we got on the bus, my brother and I. Oh, you're new here. Yeah. Where are you from? South Dakota. North? You're from the north? We don't really like Northerners. Don't sit by me. So, of course, being introduced at school, coming from the north. And lunchtime, I had my tray ready to sit. I sit down at a table with other students. And the girl across from me said, you cannot sit there. I do not want a Yankee sitting at my table. Oh, okay. Pick up my tray. Move over. There's somebody sitting in front of me. This girl over here goes, Julianne, you don't want her sitting at your table. She's a Yankee. And sure enough, Julianne got up and moved. So I really feel like I was in hell. I mean, I'd gone from heaven to hell. I knew it for sure. Well, school finally got out, and that was good and bad, so we still didn't have anything to do. But again, my parents really surrounded the family. One of the favorite things that we did was on Sunday morning. Now, we didn't go to church on Sunday morning. We never went to church. I was raised that there's a Jewish service, a Catholic, and a Protestant. So that's how I grew up. We didn't really ever go to church, and some people would say, what kind of Protestant are you? What kind of, what do you mean? I'm a Protestant. But we would sit at the table after a big breakfast. Sometimes we'd play a board game. Sometimes we'd put together a huge, giant jigsaw puzzle. Everybody had a piece, and we all went together on it. We enjoyed each other. The other thing that we did was we went to a park downtown, which was like one stoplight, And this park was fairly small, but it had kind of a fenced area where there were some monkeys and a goat or two. And this probably doesn't sound very important, but we found out the goat was pregnant, and we started waiting for her to have her babies. And I think that really helped me kind of mark time, because I was in the middle of nowhere, where time didn't pass. I was going to be there forever. So I think the mother goat waiting for her baby was a big help. So when we went to the park, my mom would bring a jug of iced tea from home, and then my dad would go to the wrong side of town and get some hot dogs. These hot dogs were famous. Everybody liked Jimmy's hot dogs. They were a foot long, they had chili on them, they cost $0.25. Whoa. So that's a lot of how my summer went. Near the end of summer, my parents wanted us to kind of clean things out, get rid of any broken, worn out toys, things that we weren't using. And so we did that. And one of the things that was done was my brother was a Boy Scout when we were in South Dakota. And he had magazines, Boy Scout magazines, called Boy's Life. And he had about a dozen of them, and my dad tied them all together. So we had all of our stuff, but we didn't know of a church to take it to. We didn't have any access to thrift stores, so we took it to the dump. And at the dump, there was 2 or 3 adults, but there was one little boy. He didn't have a shirt on, he didn't have shoes on, and he was kind of looking around. And he saw our stuff, and he kind of looked around, and he saw that bundle of Boys Life magazine. He was ecstatic. Oh, grabbed him up, put him to his chest. You could just see the joy. It was just emanating all around him. And he ran off. And my mom said, "Did you see how happy that little boy was?" Of course. She said, "You know, that might be why we're here in Georgia at this time. We never know who we're going to touch, where they're going to be, or how it's going to end. But maybe we were here to touch him." And I got to thinking, well, yeah, that's the connection with God. Yeah, I remember now, we have a connection with God, and I really want to be that connection. So I wanted to be a nurse. But when I had that experience, I realized I was going to be a nurse. I was going to help people, and I was going to help people help people. And we were thinking about that trip that we made for that little boy. But that trip was for me as well. Because I did find my destiny. I did have that in my heart. And I felt that my connection with God was that much stronger. Last week, when Reverend Georgia was talking, she made a point of saying, what is done to you is done for you. And I think my move from heaven to hell helped me gain my destiny as a nurse. So I was a nurse, got my license in 1969. I did a lot of nursing in women's health, and I did some teaching for vocational nurses. And I think recalling that day that burned in my brain and my heart was the main reason why I went ahead to become a nurse. Thank you.
Let's give it up for Judy. Hey, good job. So I would just like to ask everybody our cell phones. If you could just do a cell phone check real quick. Either turn it off or put it on stun, whatever works for you. All right, our next speaker is Brandy Lee Baker. Brandy Lee Baker has been a longtime Sacramento resident. She's been here for 20 years. She's a photographer and electrical designer. She's been at CSA now for 9 years, 3 of which have been in our choir. Brandy Lee Baker is on a mission to enlighten people on how we speak to each other and what impact that has. The title of her talk is Why I Use My Full Name. Welcome, Brandy Lee Baker!
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank you again for coming and supporting all of us. Mitch, thank you for the coaching. Reverend Georgia, thank you for opening up the sanctuary. I hope everyone's having a good holiday. Yeah? All right. So how many of y'all had nicknames growing up? Go ahead, raise your hand. I had one too. Actually, I had several. I had so many that the first time that someone asked me my name at a military function with my parents, I think I was like 4 or 5. What's your name, young lady? Trouble. My dad looked at me and was like, no, your name is Brandy. Her name is Brandy. Your name is Brandy, kid. Okay, okay. See, I didn't hear my name at all unless I was in trouble. And then it was my full name, Brandy Lee Baker. And it was never with love or kindness. It was always with anger. So my parents, my father was in the military, as I said, and my mom got to a point in her life that she didn't want to be a military wife anymore, so they got a divorce. My brother and I and my mom, we settled in Woodland, California. My dad was in Germany. A couple months later, we found out that they were actually getting divorced. And by that time, my mom had met a gentleman by the name of Butch Rogers. Shortly after my mom introduced me to him, he decided that I was going to be his property too. So he started molesting me. There came a point when I decided to ask, I don't understand why this is happening to me. Is it possible, tell me, explain to me why you think this is okay for you to do this to me. He pulled out his Bible. He was a very religious man. He grew up in a very religious church. I did not grow up in a religious family. The only time that we ever went to church was for a funeral or a wedding. So he opened up his Bible and he took it over to Genesis 3:16. It says, unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. His explanation of that was, my mom was his property, so therefore I'm his property now. So that molestation went on for quite some time, along with a lot of other abuse. As the years went on, I got really uncomfortable with it, so I did finally go to my mother and speak to her, and I told her what was happening to me when she was at work at night. And she didn't believe me. She took his word over mine. So then the abuse continued with a little bit more vigor now. As I got older, I accepted his words into my mind that I'm here to serve him or men. I'm not here for my existence. I'm here for theirs. So I lived a life as a young child of acting out. I did a lot of mean things to people. I was very rude a lot. I had no compassion, none. I got older, I got into the 7th grade. I got into the 7th grade and heard a story that will forever change my life. And the change had to happen. You see, the week before, my stepfather came home so drunk that he wanted to have an argument with my mom, and my mom wanted to argue back with him. And he didn't want to have that, so he just wanted to go get his gun. He went and got his gun, and he was threatening my mother. I had to escape the house. I escaped the house. I ran to the nearest neighbor, and I called for help. And my stepfather was arrested that night. His gun was taken. I felt safe for a little while. I went to school, came home from school, and they had released him, and he sat on his front porch in his favorite chair, drinking his favorite beer, smoking his favorite cigarettes, listening to his favorite country music, and looked at me and said, you know what's coming. I got so scared. I tried to escape. I tried to leave. I asked my mom if I could go somewhere, and he kept telling her, no, everyone stays home tonight. So later that evening, he comes into my room, but he didn't come by himself. See, Butch Rogers was an ex-cop. He had several weapons in the house. So he showed up with a Magnum in his hand. It's a very large gun, by the way, if you don't know. And he sat it down on my nightstand, and he said, if I have to reach for that, I will use it. So he threatened my life in order for me to stay there and do what he wanted to do to me. So that day when I went to school and I heard that story, I had to do something. This woman told me that it is not okay, no matter what a Bible says, no matter what a person's version or interpretation of that Bible is, it is not okay for someone to violate you in any way that you don't want. I took a huge deep breath. I could feel a fever upon my body. My hands were clammy. I got up, I walked out of that classroom asking if I could go to the restroom. Instead of going to the restroom, I went to the front office and I put a note in that counselor's box. 4 letters on it. Help. And an exclamation point with my name at the bottom. The next period came along I'm sitting in class, still feverish, still clammy, can't really breathe. And I get a note from one of the students saying that I need to go see the counselor. So I sat in the counselor's office. A few minutes later, I was sitting in a conference room with my counselor, my principal, my vice principal, a representative from the Vacaville Police Department, someone from the Solano County Sheriff's Department, because we lived in county district, and then Child Protective Services. And I had to tell my story. So I told them the story. 24 hours later, Child Protective Services had me in a foster home. See, I couldn't just get on a plane and go to my dad, because my dad was in the United States Army. He was a tank commander. You cannot be an active duty military soldier and be single with children. You have to have provisions in place for that to happen. So for 4 months, my father fought to get custody of me, and he finally got custody of me. He had to change his job duty so that he could take care of me and not be gone all the time. I finally felt safe in that foster home. Safe from harm, from bodily harm. But my mind was already there with the thoughts of, I am here to serve someone. I am not here for myself. So I continued living a life that was so destructive, so destructive. Drug addiction to meth, 7 years addicted to meth. I ended up in Seattle, Washington with the girlfriend at that time. We finally got clean together. I finally started getting an education. I got back to California because my grandmother was passing. So I came back home to finish school. Still identifying with just one word for my name. My name was B. You can tell really old friends because they'll still call me that. Even kids from grade school. I had such a destructive life. I had meth addiction, drinking heavily. I ended up go-go dancing for raves. There came a point in my life when I got married, then I got a divorce. During that divorce, I had started feeling really ill in my body. So ill that I was going to the doctor a lot. In 2009, I woke up and I couldn't even walk. I stood up and I hit the ground. My girlfriend jumped out of bed and said, we either got to go to the ER or you got to get an urgent care appointment. I'm frugal. So I decided to take the urgent care appointment. So I get to the urgent care doctor and he just touches me once on the side. He says, no, young lady, you need to get across the street to the ER. I'm going to call the ER, I'm going to get a bed ready for you. It's like, okay. So I crawl pretty much over to the ER, Sutter ER, a great staff of people at Sutter ER. I got blood work done and I got some imaging done right away. 45 minutes later, the doctor comes in and asks me, young lady, is there anybody that you would like to call right now? And I go, no, my girlfriend's here. What's going on? He says, you know, you've got a diseased gallbladder. You've got an infected liver. You've got an infected kidney. I need to do surgery, but I can't do surgery on you because you're septic. If this medication I'm giving you in this IV right now doesn't work, you've got 24 hours to live. Are you sure there isn't some family you want to call? I go, no, sir. They didn't care about me when I was growing up. They don't care about me now. I don't need to call nobody. He said, okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do all of this, and then we're going to see how this goes. So about 4 hours goes by, and he comes back in, and he says, okay, the medication is working. We can now give you your surgery. Your surgery is at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I suggest you go home and you call your family. You just might want to do that, because you might not make it. That was eye-opening for me. Sitting there hearing that I had 24 hours, I could have 24 hours to live when I had lived such a destructive life. The first words and the first thought I had, and the first words out of my mouth were, I want to live. I don't want to die. I want to live. I was completely surprised that I had said those words, because I had all of those thoughts growing up, and I had such a destructive life. I didn't know how to change the life I was leading. I had nowhere to turn. My family didn't go to church. The family members that did go to church didn't believe in my lifestyle. So I decided to make little baby steps on my own. The first one was getting a divorce from someone who was harmful for me. The second thing I did was starting to go back to school, because I like photography. That's where I met Sarah Lucy James. She's an individual who goes to church here. When I met her in class, her and I would have some really in-depth conversations. They went really deep sometimes. And then one night I invited her over to my house, and she said, you should really come over to my church. You should really check out CSA. I think you might like what they got to say over there. I go, I do not do church. If you knew anything about my life, you would know I do not do church. She goes, you should come. So with reluctancy, a few weeks later, I decided to come in. Reverend Brenda was at the front door greeting people. And she just gave me a hug. I didn't even know the woman. I got a hug. If you don't get hugs from Reverend Brenda, you need to get one from her. They're great. That was a cool thing. I saw Sarah Lucy, and then I heard Reverend Georgia say the 4 core beliefs, and the last one struck hard. That I was whole, perfect, and complete, just as I am. I've been coming here now for some time, and I started taking some classes recently. The last class I took was Metaphysical Bible Study with Reverend Rick. I had to take that class when I heard it being offered. There was no way I was going to turn it down. I realized what had happened when I took that class. I realized what happened that day in that hospital room. Just like they describe in the Bible, a lot of other people had the same thing. It's a shift in consciousness. There comes a time in your life when you just shift your consciousness, when you want to do something different with it. And it was then when I started using my full name, Brandy Lee Baker. I say it with vigor. I say it with love for myself. I do that now because I don't want anyone to think that they can call me whatever they want. You don't get to pick a nickname for me anymore. You don't get that choice anymore. That's for me. So I have a call to action for everyone here. If you have nicknames for people in your life, make sure they're good ones. When you meet new people, meet them with a smile, a handshake, if they're so inclined, a big hug. Let them know you appreciate they're here, that they're not alone. Because you never know when someone might come to you and need some help. You never know when that is. It might be you. So many times I've been in this church, just sitting in the chair crying, and I get someone to come up and give me a hug, and it changes my whole day. Changes my whole day. So when you introduce me to people, when you talk about me with your friends, you don't get to use a nickname. The name you get to use is Brandy Lee Baker. Thank you.
Yes, give it up. Yes. Give it up for Brandy Lee Baker. Woo, it's getting good in here. Oh my gosh. Wonderful, great job. Our next speaker is Claudia Samalea. She was born in Cuba and came to America to follow her dreams. She has a long and strong-standing gratitude practice, and she's been going to CSA for about 2 years, but has recently been really involved in the church. The title of her message tonight is Trust the Process. It's the pathway to your dreams. Welcome, Claudia!
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, we hear you.
Now it's on?
Yeah, you're on. You're on.
Good evening. As Mitch said, I'm Claudia, and I arrived from Cuba about 8 years and a half ago. And just to make it short, my story to getting here is very boring, very quick, very legal. Visa, plane, Miami, San Francisco, done, I'm here. Simple. So you probably will think like, well, her life will be about how was the struggle in Cuba, how hard it was. Well, sorry to disappoint you again, it won't be about that. My story, it will be more about how gratitude, just trusting whatever will happen took me through life. So, as I said, I was born in Cuba, in a very tiny city in the center of the island, one of the smaller cities, and it's called Cienfuegos. Translation, 100 fires. So this girl is on fire. So my family was very close, very, very close. My mom, she was a librarian, so I grew up very, very, very close to books and reading. And she was the artistic side of me. She taught me how to dance, how to sing, how to read poetry, how to understand all the metaphor, and how to be free in any type of way. Those was one time that we just be dancing and jumping and just moving with a very loud music until a neighbor will come and say, like, just stop it, it's too loud. And we keep dancing anyway. That was Cuba. So in the other side was my dad. He was a sailor and an engineer. So he was very strict, very logical. Everything needed to be with a certain structure. Everything needed to be planned ahead of time. And he said, well, Claudia, you are 3, you are ready to start playing chess. And I said, okay. He said, yeah, you have to play chess because chess is the sport of the mind. And you need to start thinking to your plan and all the process and what you need to do ahead of time. And so I did. And I went to competition with chess. He was super proud of me, very, very proud. And nowadays, I still see myself thinking with those strategic process, like just thinking ahead of time, planning what is coming next, what is the next step to go. So very grateful for that side of my dad. And then came my 2 beautiful sisters, Adriana and Natalia. Very loving girls, beautiful. What can I say? I love them. So that was my life in Cuba. Wonderful childhood, wonderful. So grateful for that. When I was about 10, 11 years old, I was in school. And in Cuba, they made this type of survey that they go to the school, ask children questions, because obviously kids don't lie. And they say, and they make questions so they know how the population is going. And one of the questions was, please raise your hand, the kid that their parents are still together. And I raised my hand like, yes, yes, this is me. When I look around, only 2 or 3 more kids with me in a room of about 30 students. So I was super happy. I was proud of that moment. So I'm special. So I couldn't wait to get home and tell my mom. And I said, Mom, like, look, this happened today. She said, well, it won't be for long. What are you talking about? what? What? Well, you'll see. Well, yes, I did. In a period of 3 to 5 years, everything changed. Everything changed. My mom and my dad started fighting more. Sometime in front of my sister and myself. Sometime in front of friends. Sometime in front of the family. It was hard. It was really hard seeing them fight and sometimes being verbally abused. Very few times being physically abused. Not that many, thank God. But yeah, it was going on like that. One day my dad left. He would come home only during the weekends. Later on, well, you will have another sister with another mom. Oh, wow. At 16, I was running to the lawyer to get all the instructions and paperwork for my parents to get divorced. So I went to each of them, sign here, please, sign here, please. And I went back to the lawyer. Well, now you are divorced, finally. Thank God. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. They are divorced. So grateful about it. It's over. Well, after that happened, the result, my mom never recovered, obviously. She never forgave me because I still love my dad. He was a good dad, even though he was a terrible husband, but he was a good dad. My sister, she was innocent, so I love her anyway. And other than that, my life was wonderful. I went to school, I graduated, I have wonderful friends, I have my partner, who was wonderful too. So my life was amazing. And I came to the States. You know the story. Wow. When I came to the United States of America, in one day, just one day, my life changed completely. Completely. In one day, I didn't have family. In one day, I didn't have friends. I didn't have a relationship. I couldn't speak the language. I didn't have my culture, my food. Like, nothing. I was so lonely, so sad, so irritated at moment when seeing how rude some people were to me, just because I couldn't speak the language. Sometimes they just ignore me because they just hear my accent or like I pronounce it wrong or very slow for them. They just ignore me. I was really bad. It was so lonely. There were other times that I just needed a hug. Someone to come and give me a hug. To feel that someone cared out there. But as I always do, I just keep moving and do what I have to do. I went to school. I learned the language. At least I can communicate now, right? I start working. I work in a wonderful company right now. You see all those cheap in West Sacramento? I work with those. So, yeah, my life just started getting better. And now you will wonder, well, we hear your story. What is your point? Well, this year was very special, very hard. But in January, I have this dream that was very powerful and stayed with me for the whole year, just right there. And in the dream, I was drowning, which is very very curious because I'm a really good swimmer. I'm not afraid of water. But in this dream, I was drowning. I was desperate. I was so afraid that I was drowning. I didn't know what to do. So this voice come to me and I start saying, trust the process. Trust the process. And it will change the tone a little bit, so give you a little bit of intention. Trust the process. Trust the process. And at a point, I just let go. Let go, and I start feeling the water next to me and enjoying the water, and everything start feeling better immediately. And I wake up, and I was there with this dream in my mind. What is the process? I want to trust the process, but what is the process? So I started looking back to my life. I started looking back. So at that time, when I was like feeling sad and bad for my family getting destroyed, what got me through it? What got me through it? When I came to the state and I was feeling lonely and sad, what got me through it? What's the process? And the process was simple. Just be grateful and trust that everything will be better at the end, no matter what. Everything will be better. That was the process. And it's so simple. It's so simple. And that's all. Being grateful for everything. Being grateful that I had a beautiful family, or I have a beautiful family, with beautiful sisters that now they are beautiful women. Having my dad and my mom that love me with all their heart. Coming to the state, learning the language, meeting so many cultures, eating so many type of food, delicious. The opportunity, so many opportunities in this country is unbelievable. The people that help you get those opportunities, I'm so grateful for each one of them. And I'm grateful for dreaming, just for dreaming. Like knowing that you can dream here, dream big, the biggest that you can, and you can make it. You can make it happen. Just dream big. No matter what is your dream, no matter what you want to do, if you dream it, you can make it. And that's wonderful. That's just so wonderful. I'm so grateful to be here today and ending my year like this, standing here speaking to you in my second language. Isn't that amazing? Yes. And I'm grateful for the process that made me discover and rediscover myself again and again, every single time. I'm grateful to know that everything in the world is either an expression of love or a call for love. No exception.
Give it up for Claudia. Good job. Excellent job. Wow. Public speaking is the #1 fear, and she did it in her second language. Amazing, Claudia. Great job. Thank you for that. Our next speaker is Kim McConnell. Kim in her youth was a proud participant in the gay games. In fact, she won a silver medal in soccer. Pretty cool, huh? Kim also has her own Handy Jane business. Here's some of her handiwork. We're really grateful for her. Kim has been clean and sober for over 11 years. Woo! Amazing. And she's been at CSA for over 5. Her message tonight is how to help an addict. Please give a warm welcome to Kim McConnell.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kim, and I am not an addict anymore. I say that because I don't want to be defined by my disease. I stand here with 11 years. But I'm not here to talk to you about recovery. I'm here to tell you about the other side. How many people have friends or family, or someone you know that is addicted or an alcoholic? Raise your hand. It's like 99% in here. They say over 23 million people suffer from addiction. 45% of them are dealing with mental illness. But only about 10% of them get treatment. It's hard loving an addict. You get frustrated, empty promises. But the other side isn't easy. Life is like living with blinders on. We know it's a temporary relief for temporary pleasure with negative consequences, but we don't care. We can't see that we're killing ourselves, that we're hurting others. Addicts feel that they don't matter. You know that guy on the side of the road when you get off the freeway? Holding that sign? 15 years ago, that was me. I was in Seattle on a freeway off-ramp. It was the best spot. I put on this cardboard, said I need to get gas to go see my mom. Said it lived an hour and a half away, so I only needed 20 bucks. I was lying, of course. But when you're standing there, back and forth, up and down, people turn away. They try not to make eye contact. It's like we don't even matter, that we're invisible. I saw one yesterday where the guy said, I dare you can't hit me with a quarter. I think that guy's making a lot of money. It's on 16th, by the way. Anyway, that part of my life, it was so degrading and pathetic. But we need to feed the beast. No matter what, there's something missing. A man gave me a $20 bill. He pulls up and he says, you shouldn't be out here. He saw something that I didn't see. But I went and used anyway. Addicts feel like they don't have choices. With a chemical imbalance, it's hard to make decisions. It's hard to understand the choices. We wake up craving or yearning for it or aching for it, just not to feel the pain. One time I was given a choice. Choice A, 30 days in treatment. Choice B, 1 year in jail. 30 days, 365. 30 days. I felt I had no choice. I was pissed off. I got caught. There was no way I was going to go to treatment. But I went to treatment. You do the math. While I was there, I told them I had no choice. So they set me in a room, 65 people, and I'm in the center. And we bantered for 45 minutes. And finally I realized, yeah, I had a choice, but it wasn't anything I wanted to do, because I wasn't able to use. It wasn't a choice for me. A rational person would have seen that as a gift. The second time I was given a choice, I call it my mother's 7-step choice. She gave me a little piece of paper. I've been living with them for a while. I was approximately 120 pounds. Imagine me, 120 pounds. So the list read, 1, call CSAx. 2, sign up for help. 3, go to treatment. Blah, 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 blah. Number 7 said, you have 7 days to move out. That's the only thing I saw. I read it over again and over again, but finally I decided to do it. So now I've gone to treatment 2 times. This time I learned about a new drug. Most people think that drug addicts are irresponsible people that just want to get high. is spiral down with crime, poverty, lose families, and lose their lives. The reality is, a drug addict has a story. A lot of it's a childhood trauma, sexual abuse, mental illness, or a personal tragedy. Drugs are just used to numb the pain. In childhood, I learned from the very best, my mom and my dad. My mom was sick a lot. To this day, she's still sick a lot. But it seemed like every day I would go to the man. She'd say, go to the pharmacy. He's going to give you some pills. And voila, she feels better. Dad was one of the top pot dealers in Venice Beach. Very proud of that. Way to go, Dad. A lot of times addicts don't get help physically or a hospital for fear of facing their demons or having to explain or not being treated well. One time, I started not to feel good. My arms hurt, my legs hurt. Take a hit, my arms hurt, legs hurt. It wasn't working. So I went to the hospital 3 times. I thought I was drug seeking every time. The 3rd time, I think I kind of went ape shit because everything went dark and I woke up in intensive care. While I was laying there, the nurse was preparing some medications. And the doctor walked in and said, what are you doing? And she said, well, I'm giving her her mental medications. And the doctor said, no. She's homeless from the streets. She's not on her meds anyway. I was in that hospital for 11 days. I didn't know what was wrong with me. They kept testing me and testing me. And finally, one night, you know, when you're laying there, I finally detoxed. Then my friends would come. I'd use in the hospital room. And I was flipping the channels. There's Joyce Meyer, 1-800-CALL-JOYCE. That's how desperate I was. I called that number. The first thing out of their mouths were, you need to forgive your mother and give her a call. I did, and she was there in less than 12 hours. Another time, just recently, my sister passed 3 months ago, and I had to tell my brother. My brother lives in LA, under a freeway on-ramp on 101 in Alvarado. It's the second tent from the left. It took me 3 days to find him, but I finally found him. And I thought, hey, let me drop some sense into you. Let's go to detox. Sister died, good reason, you're 50, you've been doing it for 30 years, and you just OD'd last night. There's a big epidemic of heroin laced with fentanyl on the streets today. So we went to the hospital. We were there about 12 hours. We got assessed. By the time we got the assessment phone call, he was a level 4, meaning he could go into detox right away. But it was 3 in the morning. Detox doesn't open till 8. So then, after spending all that time with my brother, I had to take him back to the tent. They did give us another day. They said, Tuesday morning, 9:30, be here in Long Beach. I told him I'd pick him up at 7:30 on Tuesday and we'd go. I'd buy him all the art supplies he needed, just so you would go. And how do you expect someone living on the streets to stay clean for 5 days? It wasn't happening. It's not like that show, Intervention, where you get together and you decide to get clean and sober and you can go right away. It's a long, hard process. So I have a few questions for us all. What if addiction isn't just about the chemical hook? In Portugal, they decriminalized drugs and call it a disease of disconnection. They take care of it with treatment and training, and drug addiction is down 50%. What if addiction is about not being to be bare be present in your own life? What if it's the cage? The cage you've created by a trauma, isolation, or simply beaten down by life. Remember, there are all kinds of addiction. It's not just drugs, it's sex, it's food, it's shopping, it's the internet, it's social media. For me, after 5 treatment centers, I finally got tired. I was walking the streets kind of like Capitol Boulevard up in Seattle. Backpack, shorts, thought I was all that. About 120 pounds again. At this point, I had no way to make money, so I tried to sell myself. Cars would come up, they'd look at me, they'd drive off. Lucky for me, I didn't have to do that. But it was at that point, breaking in the houses, stealing to eat, father died, been to 5 treatment centers, I know what to do. People have been telling me for 10 years what to do. But it wasn't until I got clean for myself. All I had to do was get clean and I could call my mother and I could be with her. While I was out there, I might not have acknowledged it, but if I didn't know that I had family, I might not be here today. So with that, never give up. Please, never give up. Say to them you love them whether or not they're using. You're not alone. We love you. The goal is to give an addict a glimmer of hope that something is better out there, that people love them. I want to thank you all for loving me, loving this church, and loving the addict in your life. Thank you.
Way to go, Kim. And we do love you very, very, very much. Wow, we're over halfway through. How's it going? Yeah. Enjoying it? Good stuff, huh? Powerful. Powerful, powerful. Our next speaker is Joy Westerland. She used to be a huge San Jose Sharks fan when she lived in the Bay Area. But since coming to Sacramento, well, now she's a River Cats fan. So she found CSA by her very trusted friend who drug her here, and she now describes it as one of the best things that ever happened. The title of her talk is, Let's Talk About the C Word. Welcome, Joy Westerland.
Hello. So, I am here to talk with you all about poop. Have you ever noticed how cute babies are when they poop? Their faces get all red. They scrunch their little lips up and they grunt, and it's just adorable. We watch what goes in and we watch what goes out. Next comes potty training. They have these cute little toilets, little mini toilets. And we clap and say yay when they do their business. And we reward them sometimes with M&Ms. And then we go dark. It may be locker room talk, I wouldn't know. Sometimes they get the don't hold it. Sometimes teens get the don't hold it lecture when they go to camp. But for the most part, it just becomes something we try not to step in our lives. So when I was 50, I had my first colonoscopy, my first photo shoot up my rear. I awoke to more air exiting my body than anybody could humanly imagine, and a doctor standing there talking about how beautiful my colon was. Not a polyp in sight, the tissue was beautiful, I had a beautiful colon. Good to go, 10, 15 years, at least that long, good to go. In my 60s, I got this in the mail. This is called a fit kit. And I can't even begin to pronounce, but I know the first word is fecal. And it's a very complete kit. It comes with a little toxic bag and a little vial, and it tells you very, very nice, colorful instructions on how to use it. But the end result is you're supposed to poop on a piece of paper, put a stick in it, put it all together, and send it through the US mail. Just the idea of all this poop, and I just noticed tonight that this goes to Oakland, California. So all this poop for Kaiser heads to Oakland, which is interesting. Well, I just laughed. Say what? You want me to do what? I have a beautiful colon. So it sat, and it sat, and that one I think I eventually just tossed. The next year rolls around, another one comes, and it sits. This time I have a physical lined up, and the doctor says to me, "You haven't done your fit kit." I said, I know, I've got a beautiful colon. So he says, "I want you to get that done." Okay. So I go home. Maybe if they'd offered me M&Ms or something, I don't know. But finally, I did get it done. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. "We need to inform you that we found blood in your stool. Not to worry, only 5% of the people that come up positive actually have cancer. Not to worry, but your next step is a colonoscopy." Okay. They're painless, they're humiliating, but they're not so bad. So I have my next colonoscopy. This time, when I wake up, there's a nurse sitting beside me, and she has tears in her eyes. And she says to me, "I'm so sorry." And I'm waking up out of this drugged state, and I went, ooh, this doesn't sound good. And she said, "I'm just so sorry. Usually it comes out good." And here comes the doctor. Doctor says, "Whoa, let's not jump the gun here. Let's wait until the biopsies come back." Oh, okay, that's good. We still have hope here. So sure enough, a few days later, I get a letter. "We are happy to inform you, no cancer," capital letters. Enter Dr. Chow. Dr. Chow is now in charge because even though I supposedly don't have cancer, we have to get this mass removed. Dr. Chow says to me, "I want to go back in. I want to do another procedure." I say, "Okay." He goes, "You know why, don't you?" And I said, "I'm smart. You think I have cancer?" And he says, "Yes, I do." "Okay, let's get this show on the road. Let's do it." So I have my second procedure, and now it's the waiting game. So a few days later, and I'm at work, And the call comes in, a call comes in, and it's Dr. Chow. And he says, Ms. Westerlund, do you have a moment? And I said, yes, I do. Let me walk down the hall a bit. So I go to the hall and I sit down in a chair very similar to this. And he says to me, Ms. Westerlund, I need to let you know that you have colon cancer. The mind is an amazing thing. Immediately, 4 things came during this critical time, came to mind. The first, of course, was that I knew that my life, as I knew it, was forever changed. The second, for me, was that there'd be no sugarcoating it. I have colon cancer. Third, I knew at that moment that I was a survivor. Not 5 years from now, not when they say I'm cancer-free, but right then and there, I was a survivor. But the fourth thing, and for me the most important, is that the word absurd went through my mind, and I thought, there is one reason, and one reason only, that this has happened. I'm meant to help someone else. Somehow, some way, someday, I'm meant to help someone else. The next step was I got up and I walked down to my boss's office. Now I have to tell you, I'm kind of an orphan up here, and I was, no longer. And my boss and her family have just about adopted me. And so when I came into her office and I sat down, and she looked at me and I told her, and she said, okay, how can I help? What is the next step? She followed that up with doing some very incredible things, such as doubling my temporary last paycheck. They are the folks that took me to the hospital. They are the folks that brought me home. She set the stage for the next chapter, which has been absolute outpouring of love. So much love and so many good wishes coming my way that at times it was overwhelming. Sometimes very, very clumsy. And we talk about that here in this church. On Thanksgiving, I got a call from a friend I hadn't heard from like in a year. And I picked up the phone and I said, hey. And she goes, oh my God, I've been dreading this call. And I said, whoa. I said, why? And she said, because I didn't know what to say to you. I said, how about, hey Joy, I haven't talked to you in forever and it's good to hear your voice. And from that point on, it was just a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I have another friend that can't refer to it as anything other than my medical condition. And then one of my dearest, dearest friends, I've actually had to say goodbye to for a few months because you get very, very clear when you're in my situation and you know what's healthy and what isn't. And my friend is a little loosey-goosey. I've always supported that and loved her just the way she is. But she's very loosey-goosey when it comes to Big Pharma. And when she suggested that I ask my oncologist how much of a bonus she was getting for signing me up for chemo, I knew that I had to say goodbye for a few months. And it was sad, and it was not, it was sad. I have to say, though, that without a doubt, I have spent the last 3 months riding on the wings of every good wish and all the love and prayers that have come my way. And I've had some beautiful moments. There's a small group of us. I live in a 55 and older community, and there's a small group of us. We are the late afternoon ladies that like to meet at the pool around 4 or 5. And one day I was down there with my neighbor, just the two of us, and we had just had some of those Life Touch photos done for our development for a directory. And so we're sitting there talking, and I looked at her, and she asked me, you know, if I was happy with my photo, and I laughed, and I said, yeah, I paid the extra $30 to get it touched up, just in case it's my memorial photo. And she looked at me, and what came out of that, though, was the most amazing conversation. We started talking about whether we wanted to be buried or cremated, whether we wanted to be stuffed in a drawer somewhere, whether we wanted to go off Mount Diablo or off the ocean somewhere. We talked about Bocelli. We talked about a song I loved called Well Done by the Afters. We talked about words that we would love to have used when the time comes, like kind and devoted. I like integrity, and I like fierce. And all of a sudden, she turned to me, and she put her hand on my arm. She had tears in her eyes, and she said, I've never got to have this conversation before. Whenever I bring it up to my kids, they say, oh, Mom, you're going to outlive us all. And she said, but I'm not. I'm 85 years old. She said, thank you for this conversation. And that was a beautiful moment for me. Currently, I want to let you know that I've had my surgery. I had 12 inches of my colon removed. All the signs, everything looks very, very good. I was hoping that 12 inches of colon might weigh 10, 20 pounds. I'm here to tell you it doesn't. So they harvested 14 lymph nodes at that time. 2 of them had cancer in them, so I am going through chemo. I just finished my second round, basically earlier this afternoon. My doctor's words to me are that my cancer is very treatable and I have a long life ahead of me. So I just have a detour to get to that. In closing, I'm the shy kid that sits in that back corner. For me to be up here, there's one reason. I don't know if any of you have one of these tests sitting anywhere. I don't know if any of you know someone that does. Some of you are young. They'll come to you someday. People have asked me, the number one question that's been asked of me is, how did I know? What signs did I have? I had none. I'm the healthiest person you guys have ever looked at my age. I had none. If it were not for this test and me finally getting it done, I'd probably be having a very different talk with you. So, if it takes M&Ms, let me know. I'll get them. Thank you very much.
Yes, give it up for Joy. Let me throw her M&Ms. Good job. Very, very good. Our next speaker, we only have 2 more. Kathy Greer Gonzalez, or Kathy G, as she goes by. She's one of our more experienced speakers. She's actually completed level 1 of Toastmasters. She's spoken extensively in the recovery community and in the mental health organizations. Kathy has been with Science of Mind now for more than a decade and is our most newly licensed practitioner. We're really excited about that. The title of Kathy's talk is Crazy Woman, Divine Lightning. Give it up for Kathy G.
we opened with the Lord's Prayer. And I could feel my brother's presence all around me. And I could feel his hand on my shoulder, leaning in and telling me that he loved me and that everything was okay and that he was okay. And I looked out into the audience and I noticed that there had to have been more than 100 people present in the chapel that day. It felt like an AA meeting or an NA meeting because there were so many members of our meetings that were there, along with old friends and family. And during that time in the chapel, we shared stories about my brother. We sang and we cried and we laughed. And of course, we played his favorite music, Tower Power, Al Green, Santana, and of course the blues. That was our music back in the day. We found an old picture of my brother, of him blowing out his candles, and we projected it up on the wall because the day of his memorial was the day of his birthday. He would have been 49. And so as we projected it on the wall, we sang happy birthday to him. And then we closed with a serenity prayer. And everybody slowly said their goodbyes and cried and hugged, and I just looked around and I knew that I needed to get out of the chapel. So I found my way down the aisle and I walked out of the chapel quietly and silently, all alone. And I leaned up against the car that was right out in front of the chapel. And I was numb. I couldn't believe that my brother had died. I couldn't believe that after 8 years of solid recovery from heroin and other drugs, that he went back out and he fell asleep at the wheel of his vehicle and he careened into a telephone pole and he died. And as I leaned up against the car, I remember looking up to the sky and to the heavens, and I remember thinking to myself, my goodness, it's raining just like the night my brother died. The weather's exactly the same. And as I looked up, the clouds parted and the sun had kissed the rain and a beautiful rainbow appeared before me. And the sky was illumined by light and an angel appeared before me. And I could hear my brother again saying, I love you. I'm okay. And I'm always here. Now, before I go on with my story, I do have a question for you. Has anyone had a premonition, an intuitive thought, or knowing that something was going to happen, but you just didn't know what it was? Has anyone had those? Yeah, me too. When I was living in Santa Cruz, I was going through a period of time where this started coming up for me, where I was having those premonitions, I was having those feelings, I was having those stirrings in my gut that said something bad's going to happen, but I had no idea what it was. Eventually, Spirit came to me and said, someone is going to die. And I could not understand that. I didn't want to believe that. It scared me, it confused me, it made me even more nervous because it was like an intuitive knowing. One day, the day before my brother passed, I woke up frantic. I've got to find my brother. I have to find my brother. Called and called him. He never answered. Called my kids. I called my mom. They never answered. I never got a hold of him. And the only thing I could think to do was to be with friends and light a candle and pray. And that's exactly what I did that night. The next morning I woke up to the sound of a phone ringing. And my girlfriend at the time answered the phone. And before she could say hello, we both could hear my mom screaming in the background, "Carl has died. Carl's dead. My son's dead." And when I heard my mom, I remember screaming out my brother's name. He was like my kid. I helped raise him. He can't be dead. He can't be. We just got him back. He's been in recovery too long. We waited so many years. I remember sobbing and screaming. And I blacked out as I was dropping to my knees. The minister that I was going to church with at the time came over and she talked to me. I was powerless, obviously, and I was stunned, and I was numb. And the days ahead and the weeks ahead were about preparing for the funeral. Came back to Sacramento. We prepared for the funeral. We did our due diligence with everything that we needed to do. And when it was all over, there was silence in the house. And I moved back in with my mom to help her because she was not the same, not by any means. And so I spent the next 3 years of my life, from 2006 to 2009, trying to save my mom from her grief, trying to save my mom from her depression, trying to save anyone but myself. I refused to feel my grief. I refused to let anybody know how I felt. I just couldn't handle that. I could not go that deep. I could not feel the fact that my brother died. It was like a dream, still after 3 years. But I was getting sicker and sicker myself. My mental health was making a really bad turn, and I began isolating. I stopped going to meetings. I stopped seeing people. And I found myself sitting in my room, writing, staring, obsessing. I was addicted to TV. I was addicted to saving my mom. I was addicted to not helping myself. I was very, very sick inside. But the big thing was that I didn't use. I didn't drink. And that is an amazing thing, that I could walk through the process of my brother dying and not use or drink. But I was getting mentally ill. My doctor finally got a hold of me and said, "You need to go to a mental health facility, and I'm going to send you to Placer County Mental Health to the outpatient program." And so I decided to go to a women's group that was for women who deal with depression, women who deal with grief, and any other thing that needs to come up for them. And so for 2 months, I showed up once a week, trying to be a mini therapist, trying to save everyone else, not letting my feelings come out, because I was a good soldier. And I succeeded at that for about 2 months. And one day I remember driving there, and I did not feel the same at all. And I sat down in the chair, and when it was my turn to check in, I remember looking up into the sky, into the top of the room, kind of floating away, and I spoke. And what I said was, "I don't want to do this life anymore. I am so done. I can't feel any of this pain, and I'm done. I just want to leave the planet." And I blacked out. And the next thing I knew, I felt somebody's hand on my leg, and I heard somebody whispering in my ear, "Kathy, it'll be okay. I promise you, it will be okay. We're going to get help for you." And as I came back into the room and came back into my body, I noticed that everybody was gone, and I don't remember anyone leaving. So they took me down to the psychiatrist, and they evaluated me. And they said they were going to put me into an inpatient mental health facility for at least a week to evaluate me. They just wanted me to lock me up in a padded room, I know that. But I was okay with that because I didn't care. I didn't care at all. I didn't want to live. So they walked me out into the waiting room, waiting for the ambulance to come, because the ambulance had to take me from Sunrise over to Sunrise, which is right around the corner, to Sutter emergency room to evaluate me. And I thought, well, that's stupid. Why can't I drive? So I told the psychiatrist, I said, just let me drive there. It's right around the corner. You don't have to waste the money. They looked at me like, yeah, and you'll never come back. You guys think I'm stupid? I want to go. And they said, no, you think we're stupid. You're staying. So I sat there, and I waited for the ambulance, and here the ambulance comes, and they take me to the back of the ambulance, and they do their due diligence. They do my vitals, and say that, okay, everything's okay, we're going to strap you into the gurney. And the next thing I know, they come back and they say, ma'am, I am so sorry, but we can't take you. Well, why not? Because we're not contracted with this facility. You're going to have to go wait for the other ambulance. Wow. Why didn't you just let me drive? Go sit back down. Okay. So, waited for the other ambulance. Ambulance came. They did my vitals, and they said, we're contracted, we're taking you. And they put me in the back of the ambulance, and they strapped me down on the gurney, and I laid there quietly as we drove off. And it was raining horribly that day, and it was thundering, and it was lightning, and all I could hear was the rain and the thunder, and I could hear the dispatcher in the background, and I could hear my breath, and nothing else. And all of a sudden, the thunder clapped so loud across the sky, and then a piece of lightning just came down on top of the ambulance that it shattered the ambulance. I thought we got hit. And it was like, oh my God, what just happened? And the EMT that was sitting with me and I looked at each other and I said, oh my God. This reminds me of the night my brother died. It's the same exact thing. It was thundering and lightning, and it was raining so hard. And he lost control. And he said, oh, ma'am, I'm so sorry. What happened? I said, 3 years ago, my brother lost control of his car on Baseline Road in Roseville, and he died. And he said, what road? Baseline. And he said, really? He said, well, what kind of a vehicle did he have? And I said, he had a black truck. Well, what happened to him? And I said, he probably fell asleep at the wheel or passed out. And he careened off the road and hit the top of the telephone pole. And the telephone pole fell and crushed him in his vehicle. And he said, oh my God, I was on the scene and I was the one that pronounced your brother. What? And he said, did he have a really big tattoo on his arm? And I said, yeah, he did. And he said, yes, I was with him. You see, for the last 3 years before that moment, I had prayed for my prayer that I would have enough courage to go to the fire department and the EMT station because they were right up the road from where my brother died. And I wanted to know, did he die instantly? Was he awake when you got there? Did he say anything? Did he suffer? And 3 years later, in the back of an ambulance, where I did not want to live anymore, my prayer was answered. And the EMT that pronounced my brother was sitting right next to me. And I didn't even know what to do with that information. And I remember looking up at the top of the ambulance, and all of a sudden, the whole cab of the ambulance illumined. And there was an angel there. And I could hear my brother saying, "It's okay, Kathy. I love you. And I am right here all the time." Life is interesting. And we have these spiritual experiences all the time, whether we recognize them or not. And I don't know what that night was about, except to say my prayer was answered. I haven't been able to process it still after all these years. And I had no shift in consciousness. I still didn't care that I wanted to live. I still went to the mental facility and spent over a week there, 48 hours in a padded room. But I do know that God exists. And I know that when we leave this life and go on to the next expression of our lives, we're surrounded always by our loved ones and friends. And I do know that prayers do get answered. Mine did. But they never get answered the way we want sometimes. They never get answered maybe in the time that we want them to be answered or the way we want them to be answered. But I do believe that our prayers are always answered for our highest and greatest good in time and on time. And maybe it was because that moment happened to let me know that there is life after death, and there is life in this life, and God is always with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. Woo. Yeah. All right. Well, we've come to our last speaker, last but certainly not least. Leah Eldridge. She's a mother of 3, a member of CSA since 2006, a licensed practitioner, and she's been a realtor for almost 20 years here in the area. Part of Leah's mission in life is to help others shine as bright as possible. The title of her talk tonight is "The Truth Shall Set You Free." Welcome, Leah Eldridge.
How you guys doing? Good. We're almost at the end. Thank you all so much for coming. Does anybody need to stand up and shake it out a little bit? No? No? Okay, I kind of do. All right, I gave you a chance. Now you got to listen to me for 15 minutes. 3 things cannot long be hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Lord Buddha said that. Did you ever, when you were a kid, did you ever camp out in the backyard with friends, like in your house or somebody else's backyard? I'm going to tell you a true story tonight about camping out in the backyard. It was 1975. It was Northern California. It was a very warm, clear night. And I was going to camp out in the backyard with 2 other girls, 2 friends. This was a no-tent night. It was very clear outside, nearly full moon. And so it was just us 3 girls. Our sleeping bags, some snacks, and a little dog named Winnie. I was 10 years old. And this was that time in life when nothing is impossible. And all of a sudden, a meteor shot across the sky. And all three of us saw it simultaneously, which I guess is not that unusual. But as that shooting star went by, bam! All three of us knew the answers to everything. And I'm not kidding, this was real. This is a true story. This was not childhood fantasy. We knew the answers to it all. For several hours that night, 3 children spoke like philosophers. We understood the makeup of the atom. We understood how the galaxies were formed. We talked about history and politics. We understood the purpose of the human experience. And of course, we talked about the Creator, and we talked about creation. And it was nothing like what we were learning in the Catholic elementary school we all attended together. Now, one of the things that we knew that night was that this gift, this divine connectedness, would last until we fell asleep. And so we did, as children often do, and we fought to stay awake. Being so wise was so wonderful. But one by one by one, we drifted off to sleep and back into the sweet innocence of childhood. The next morning we woke up and the gift was gone. I don't think we ever spoke about that night again. But at least for me, the gift left an echo. Now I got back into the business of growing up, back into my childhood, went back to school. Time marches on. As I got toward the end of my elementary school experience, another truth started to bubble up. And that was that I was a little bit different than the other girls in my class. 8th grade, by the way, for Catholic kids, or the end of elementary school is 8th grade, and that means you're like 12 or 13 years old. The other girls in class were very interested in the boys. For me, the boys were all my friends, and I was interested in them, what ones I wanted on my baseball team and my basketball team and how we win. That was about it. You know, when you're in 8th grade, different is dangerous. So I just kept it to myself. And then we left elementary school and we went where you go, the all-girl, private, Catholic girls' school, right? It's that school that's across the street from the all-boys school. You know, like that street is going to stave off the power of biology. And my unique weirdness, which by the way, at this point, I didn't even have a name for, I didn't know what happened to anybody else besides me. My unique weirdness was taking up more and more of my time as I entered high school. But there was this other phenomenon that showed up, and it was this. There were girls that I knew that became pregnant. And these pregnant girls in high school, they just disappeared. And I don't mean they went to a different school or we didn't see them for a while. They were gone. The pregnant girls, there was no baby showers, there was no birth announcements. You didn't run into them at parties or at the grocery store. You never heard of them. They disappeared. And in my mind, these ladies had committed a sin of timing. At this point in my life, I was every day considering committing the sin that I was told was a sin against nature. If they disappeared, what would happen to me if anybody ever found out about my unique weirdness? I kind of figured I would just burst into flames like a monk in protest out there in the quad. So I had to develop a strategy for survival, and it was this. I was gonna fake heterosexuality. I was pretty sure I could pull it off too. So I got a boyfriend in the freshman year, and I kind of kept him through the end of high school. And as all, totally normal with the high school thing, that ended. And I dated around a little bit, and then I went to college, and I met this guy he was different, and we had a lot in common, and we liked hanging out together, and we were older, and I knew what to call my unique weirdness. And I started thinking, this might work. I might be able to make this work. This might be the one. I think I can do this. I think I can live with this. And so I finally told him, I said, I think I might be a lesbian. I mean, he didn't care. He kind of dug it that I knew that, and I was going to pick him. So this was it. Now, I'm thinking at this point, you guys all got to be saying, Leah, what does the shooting star thing in 1975 and all this sexual orientation stuff of your childhood have to do with anything? I'll tell you, it was that echo. So the night before my wedding in 1987, the echo showed up. I was laying in bed the night before, and that echo was reverberating in my bones. And this is what it sounded like. You are making a huge mistake. But I had a plan, and I was sticking to that plan. I left that behind. I walked myself down that aisle, and I promised my friend, before God and both of our families, that I would live this lie until the day I died. And we did it. And it was okay. It was actually more than okay. For a while, it was great. There was some really great stuff about it. We ended up with 3 kids, 3 beautiful daughters. And God knows how many grandkids we're going to end up with. And that tremendous blessing came out of this enormous intentional lie. But the echo was still there. The kids needed a foundation, a spiritual foundation. My kids were getting a little bit older, and I thought they needed a spiritual foundation. Actually, I was the one that needed a spiritual foundation. And I know I've been talking to you about my Catholic schooling, but that actually started out with a pretty significant lie, too. When you want to go to the Catholic school, you have to have an intake interview and give them a bunch of money. And I was about 7 when that meeting took place, I think. And we sat there in the principal's office. Sister Elizabeth, your full-on nun with the black and white habit, the whole 9 yards. And she says to my mom, now regular church attendance is a requirement for all our students here. And my mom says to the very proper nun, we attend church regularly. Now, this meeting was happening after Easter, and I knew, my 7-year-old little self, that we hadn't been to church since Christmas. That's the lie that I started my foundation with. And as I got into the schooling and started, you have religious studies every day, even when you're in 3rd and 4th and 5th grade. But by the time I get to 7th and 8th grade, and certainly in high school, what I was learning in there was, it was bullshit. I just couldn't believe that the God that created all of this could be that petty. And so I had no faith. And the more they talked to me about it, the shallower I got. So my kids needed a foundation, and I went out church shopping. The church shopping story, it's a good one. It's a whole talk unto itself. It's a tragedy, it's a comedy. We're just going to jump ahead to the good part, okay? My little family had relocated to West Sacramento in an attempt to bring more happiness and stability by changing the zip code. And take it, some of you've tried that. Not real successful, but in the end, it ends up good. So I was out exploring my new city one day, and I kind of wandered over to the crusty side of town. I was lost. And I kind of floated down West Capitol Boulevard. And I saw this little sign, and I'm not kidding, this sign's like this big. And it's in front of this weird little building with this big iron fence around it. And the sign says, the Center for Spiritual Awareness. And it caught my eye. And I think it's significant that it said the Center for Spiritual Awareness and not the Church of Spiritual Awareness. If it had said the church, I'd have just kept on going by. But I really had no idea what a center was. And I'd like to tell you that I ran in there that day or I hustled on over there that Sunday. I didn't. I think it took about a year for the echo and my curiosity to send me in there. But I eventually walked through those doors. I wandered over there one day, parked my car back behind the big black gate. I walked through the door. I was greeted by this lovely man in a beautiful green suit with bright, sparkly green eyes. Brother Gian said to me, "Good morning, welcome, we're glad you're here." And then he gave me an unsolicited hug. I went in. I can't remember anything about the sermon. Sorry, Rev. I cried in public that day. And at that time in my life, that was really unusual. I came back for more of those unsolicited hugs. Now, family life at this point was becoming pretty untenable. I was huddled in the closet of my own chosen lie, peeking out through the now pretty well open door. And one day, the man I married came and shoved me out of the closet. I wasn't ready. And I was pissed at him for a really long time. But I gotta tell you, it's probably the nicest thing he ever did for me, other than those 3 beautiful girls. As I tumbled out, the heavy cloak of shame and deceit fell off with unimagined ease. And I found myself standing there in the bright light of who I really am. And the echo was closer to the surface than it had ever been. Looking back on the 1975 experience, and specifically getting up in the morning after I knew something powerful had happened the night before. There are 3 things that I took away from that, and I think I knew them as a 10-year-old child just as much as I know them today. Thing number 1 is, all there is God. That's it. Really, that's how it works. Thing number 2 is, we live not only just in a friendly universe, but in a universe that is here to support us on purpose. Number 3 is, this experience was not special. It wasn't rare. It happens all the time. And for whatever reason, we choose either not to share it or it disappears into our memory. So, if there's anybody listening to me, anybody who's ever had one of these experiences, I want to encourage you, find a trusted friend, share your experience. If you're not ready, hang on to it. Hold it tight in your memory. The time will come. This is a blessing. Recently, I contacted the 2 women that were with me and saw the shooting star in 1975, and both of them report that they have no memory of the incident. For me, I am so grateful that I maintained that memory and that I maintained my belief in its authenticity. And as for that echo, well, that's a tuning fork now. It's a tool that I use to keep myself pointed in the direction of my growth and my fulfillment. If we follow the truth, it will lead us out, free at last. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Thank you so much for listening. Namaste.
Way to go, Leah. I want to invite Reverend Brenda up just to share a few closing words with us. And here she comes. Let's give her a hand. Reverend Brenda.
I want to invite the speakers back up. Can we get a standing ovation? What a powerful, power-filled night, yes? Yes. Yes. Whew. So I would like to ask you, what one word rises up as you think about the stories that you heard tonight? Courage. Anything else? Inspiration. Anything else? Connection. Hope. Anything else? Strength. Not giving up. Truth. Sharing the love. For me, it was vulnerability. For these people to stand up here and let us see them. Stripped naked. That is love, isn't it? Yeah. One of the greatest gifts we could ever have. And I'm so honored that it happened here at CSA. The church that is, love is building. Yeah. That's what it is. That's what it is. And so we're going to pass our basket now. But before we do, I just want you to really get into that place of gratitude, knowing that all of those words that were spoken here tonight of courage and strength and trust and love and hope, that these were seeds planted within each of our hearts tonight for the journey that we're on, and that a space has been created for you to come up here and tell your story. Because it's important. Who's that? It's not just for me. It's not just about me. And so let's give with the awareness that our gift is not just about us tonight. Amen?
Amen.
And I guess we'll do a benediction?
Yes, please.
Okay. As we continue moving into this holiday season, just knowing that we leave this place still in this field of unified love, that there is no situation bigger than love, and that love is at all times healing, holding us and healing us. As we know, this is true for and about ourselves. We know it is true for and about each and every one that concerns us. And so it is.
So it is.
Show your love to the speakers before you leave.